The Jameson family disappeared on Thursday, October 8, 2009. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. The Jameson family's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to them. A 6-year-old girl and her free-spirited parents vanish in the backcountry of Oklahoma.
It was terrifying to know that they might be lost in those woods.
I had the feeling from the very first moment that it was foul play.
We thought they were either one, lost on that mountain, or two, it was a murder-suicide.
A police investigation reveals bizarre questions, but no answers.
I know she's told the neighbors around here she's a witch.
In this area, you find that much money, automatically you start to think about drugs.
Then she put the gun to his head and said, "You need to go."
This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated.
It was like not knowing. I mean, what happened to my kids?
They didn't deserve this.
On the day before the Jamesons disappear, they load their pickup truck and drive 30 miles to Oklahoma's Panola Mountain.
They were looking for property. They were looking to go buy 40 acres of land in a very rural area.
The Jamesons had actually learned about the land on the internet.
The parcel of land is situated in a remote area near an abandoned oil well.
It is really forested area. There's a lot of cliffs and ravines. That's what they like, though. They liked nature.
Those who know Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson say the couple looked at Panola Mountain as a fresh start, a new beginning for them and their young daughter.
They like to go look at land and imagine what if and fantasize about, you know, building whatever, their dream businesses, homes, whatever.
Nikki Schnell has been Sherilyn Jameson's closest friend for more than 10 years.
She used to say a lot, you have to stand for something. I don't care what you stand for, but you have to stand for something. When she believed in something, she believed in it with her whole heart.
Friends and family say that when Sherilyn met Bobby Jameson in the summer of 2002, she knew he was the man for her.
Sherilyn decided right then and there that she liked him and she was interested. Bobby was a very gentle man. He was a good man. He didn't want to do anybody wrong.
They fell in love and got married in July of 2004. Later that summer, the Jamesons have a baby girl and name her Madison.
Madison was my son's, I guess, best gift in his whole life.
Where are you going, TC? Looky, there you are on TV.
She was just, you know, a beautiful child, and her and I were best friends.
Madison.
For Bobby and Sherilyn, moving to Panola Mountain is the next step in building a simpler life. They're excited to join the small community living there, people who prize independence and self-sufficiency.
There's very few people that live up there. Even the ones that do have the bare minimum needs.
In order to have electricity, you have to really have a generator. Some people have septic systems, some people don't. It's a pretty rustic way of life.
When it comes to being off the grid, they're as close as you probably could be in this area.
On the morning the Jamesons start to explore the mountain where they hope to make their new home, they become lost in a maze of dirt roads. They run into one of the handful of people living up there and ask for directions.
He's out there working, he sees them come up. They're talking about buying land in that area. They're asking him questions about, okay, how do you build on a place, you know? How do you do the things that you need to do to be able to live in this area?
Bobby and Sherilyn get directions to the plot of land they're considering and decide to return the next day. The following morning, they drive back up the mountain looking forward to seeing the place where they would live out their dreams.
I think they wanted to get away from everybody and be able to enjoy life on their own, not to have to answer to anybody.
It's pretty desolate, but I think desolate at that point was what they were looking for. They were just kind of looking to start anew and kind of get away from mainstream.
But the Jamesons' outing comes to an unexpected and mysterious end. 8 days later, hunters on four-wheelers find a locked truck parked on a dirt road near the top of Panola Mountain.
They peeked in the window and they saw a dog, and the dog was not doing so well. It had been locked in that truck for multiple days.
There wasn't any food for the dog. I mean, she was a survivor. She was a survivor to live through that.
There is no sign of the Jamesons anywhere on the hilltop. The Latimer County Sheriff's Office is called.
The call just came in that there's an abandoned truck up there. We broke the glass, got the dog out of there. We started to do an inventory on the vehicle to try to find out who they were.
When he began to find things in there, he knew that it was something definitely was wrong. They had cell phones in their truck, and their billfolds were there, her purse was there. It was like they had just disappeared.
Because their coats, phones, and money are all left behind, police believe that Bobby and Sherilyn, along with their 6-year-old daughter, Madison, must be lost nearby in the woods.
After we started looking through everything, we were figuring, okay, they're up here.
It would be quite easy for somebody to go out there and get bit by a snake and to not be able to get back to the truck and just to not be able to find your way around.
Police conduct an immediate search of the area surrounding the truck.
I had 5 or 6 deputies up there. Started calling out their names once we figured out who they were, trying to get some type of reply from them.
Rugged terrain makes the search doubly challenging.
You can get lost in the woods up there very easily unless you know where you're going. Because if you get in the midst of the trees, you can't see, very far ahead.
For law enforcement, time is of the essence.
There was a child missing. It was getting towards, middle, end of October. The nights were getting colder, and they didn't have their jackets with them because those were left in the truck.
We knew that they had been there 8 to 9 days, and you're getting on that timeline there where, the chances of making it, we're at that point now.
Why hadn't anyone reported that the Jameson family had been missing for 8 days? The few people that saw their truck guessed that it belonged to a work crew.
There's a lot of wells up in that area, oil wells, gas wells. So a lot of people thought it was just people with an oil field that had come in.
Also, the Jamesons were a very private family, and it wasn't unusual for them to hunker down for several days or longer without speaking to friends or family members.
They had a habit of going out of town for extended periods of time and not really letting anybody know.
We could go a year and not talk and pick up the phone and act as if no time had gone by. That's just the relationship that we had. There's a lot of reasons why no one was alarmed.
Bobby and Sherilyn had also just pulled 6-year-old Madison out of school in preparation for homeschooling her.
The school didn't realize that, Madison wasn't there because she had been taken out.
If it wasn't for the hunters coming down and telling the man that lived close to him about the vehicle, it could have been that much longer.
The sheriff's men on Panola Mountain realized that by now, the Jamesons could be anywhere. They used the family's cell phones to help reconstruct their last known movements.
As we checked the GPS from the phone, we had found out that they didn't spend the majority of the time parked there.
GPS coordinates lead police up a nearby hill, where they find footprints.
The 6-year-old's footprints were there, and that was obvious and easy to identify.
We were able to follow their footprints as well as follow the GPS on the camera up to a rock.
They determine that the Jamesons spend about 15 or 20 minutes up the hill from their truck. And remarkably, they find an eerie memento of the family's time on the hill.
The cell phone had a picture on it of Madison. They'd actually taken a picture on a small bluff that was just north of the location, maybe just a couple hundred yards.
It's the last picture that we have of Madison.
It appears to police that after taking the photo, the Jamesons return to their truck and start to leave. What happened next is shrouded in mystery. Then, while scouring the cab for more clues, a deputy sheriff makes a stunning discovery.
He said, "I've got something to tell you, and I think you need to come up here." And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And he told me, he said, "Hey, there is a substantial amount of money in this vehicle."
A bank bag, hidden beneath the driver's seat, contains $32,000 in cash.
I wondered why. Why is all this money in here?
Anytime any large amount of cash is found in a vehicle, it raises a lot of red flags.
So at that moment, I said, okay, get everybody away, tape it off as if it was a crime scene. Don't know, what's going on yet, but tape it off.
We really weren't sure why they disappeared.
Coming up, evidence points to a violent event in the Jamesons' disappearance.
I think that they were probably forced out at gunpoint. I mean, why would you struggle if someone has a gun to you?
While looking at a plot of land on Oklahoma's Panola Mountain, Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their 6-year-old daughter Madison have disappeared. Investigators find the family's truck abandoned in the Oklahoma backcountry.
Pickup sitting down there, with all of their goods and the dog locked inside the car was very suspicious.
Investigators are confounded by their most recent discovery, a hidden bank bag containing $32,000 in cash.
It's very unlikely that they would leave the vehicle there and lock their cell phones and their wallets and leave all of that in the car on their own accord, but we really didn't know.
Investigators are also baffled that the family dog was apparently left to die in the cab of the truck.
Madison, once she had that puppy, never went anywhere without the puppy.
It just doesn't make any sense, because that was Madison's friend, and she would have screamed and hollered if he'd left the dog in the car.
The whole fact that the dog was in the truck locked up and they're nowhere to be found tells me that they got out of the truck in a hurry.
Even the cell phone picture of 6-year-old Madison prompts speculation among some of their friends.
I don't think her parents took that picture. I think that somebody else that she did not know took that picture. She had her arms out like this and her hand was over in a weird position. She was looking off. It wasn't a real smile. She looked very uncomfortable to me. Very uncomfortable.
Police theorized that the Jamesons were in their truck heading back down the mountain when they were interrupted.
It seemed to me like they were leaving and that someone came up that one-way road and they stopped. Maybe they knew him, maybe not well. They stopped, talked to the person. From there, obviously, I don't know what happened.
But investigators find no signs of a struggle at the scene of the truck.
Signs of struggle for life or death would be violent. That's not going to be some small tussle.
There was no blood found on the vehicle. There was no broken glass.
You're obviously looking for disturbance on the ground. When people fight, there's clothes that's shredded, there's things that fall out of pockets. Whenever it's that violent, something would be left to show that there was something that happened there.
Still, friends and family think the scene suggests that the Jamesons left against their will.
I think that they were probably forced out at gunpoint. I mean, why would you struggle if someone has a gun to you?
Hopeful for a lead, investigators process every item found in the truck.
At this point, there were so many different things that led us in different directions. We weren't sure if they were lost, we weren't sure if they were abducted.
Then, buried in the clutter filling the cab, they stumble upon something they never expected. An 11-page letter written from Sherilyn to her husband, brimming with hostility.
She was lashing out big time in this letter to Bobby.
It was just a hate and discontent. The years of fighting, she felt that he wanted to be a loner and didn't really need a family. Hate.
Investigators learn that in recent months, there were serious stresses in the Jamesons' marriage.
We learned from their family members that they were having problems. We had learned from the letter that they were talking about getting divorced.
They had been looking at selling their house and kind of moving away to get away from that to make things better.
Much of the strain dates back to 2003, when Bobby was involved in a serious auto accident.
Bobby was driving his truck in 2003, and he had a wreck. He was coming around a curve, which is a blind curve in the road, and this lady hit him from one side, and another lady hit him from the other side.
Since the accident, Bobby suffered from chronic pain and was unable to work.
It is very hard for him to get up out of bed even. Medicine wasn't really helping relieve the pain.
It made it hard for him to do things around the home, and I think that the pain every day, the chronic pain, really put a toll on his spirits, and I think he became depressed, and it made things more difficult in the marriage.
The letter forces investigators to consider a violent scenario in the Jamesons' disappearance. Their concerns heighten when family members tell them that a pistol belonging to Sherilyn Jameson cannot be found.
We didn't know about the .22 pistol until that moment, so we said, no, we haven't found a pistol. And they told us, okay, well, usually she carries this pistol in the vehicle.
Investigators search the Jamesons' truck and house thoroughly. When they find no pistol, they begin to fear the worst.
We got a pistol missing, we have a hate letter here. We're starting to point toward maybe murder-suicide. We thought to ourselves that maybe it was her that killed them.
Coming up, leads in the Jamesons' disappearance go from confusing to downright bizarre.
Bobby had asked him, okay, is there a special bullet that I can buy to kill these spirits?
Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their 6-year-old daughter Madison have been missing for nearly 2 days. The possibility of foul play comes to the forefront of the investigation as police learn more about a troubled marriage and Sherilyn's missing pistol.
A pistol being missing is important. We were told by family members that she carried the pistol everywhere. Maybe this was a murder-suicide.
If a murder-suicide had occurred, the Jamesons' bodies would still be somewhere on Panola Mountain. On October 17th, less than 24 hours after their truck was found, law enforcement begins a massive search.
The emergency management in Latimer County got a hold of all the fire departments in this area, EMS, forestry. Local people started showing up with horses, four-wheelers.
They didn't know where to go, where to start looking. You know, so they just took teams and went up there.
All of the resources of Latimer County are brought to bear. Helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, tracking dogs, teams of horses and mule, and hundreds of personnel all assist in the search effort. The rough terrain makes everything twice as hard.
It's a triple canopy, a lot of woods, a lot of rocks, almost all of it straight uphill, and very, very tough conditions to try to do a search in.
It was also hazardous and dangerous because a lot of the people didn't know the woods and they could get lost.
Walking up those mountains and trying to keep a straight line and everybody intact is very, very hard to do in that type of terrain.
Tracking dogs are also brought up to Panola Mountain to aid in the search effort.
There were dogs that we brought up to the scene, both cadaver dogs and air scent dogs, to try to locate the Jameson family.
We used some articles from the vehicle to let the dogs take a sniff of it, try to get familiar with their scent.
The dogs start at the truck and fan outward through the surrounding terrain.
They were very interested at the top of the mountain as well as around the truck. They didn't really want to leave that area.
Although acres of woods surround the open area at the top of Panola Mountain, the dogs don't venture off the plateau. They alert on a nearby water tank, signaling investigators to the possible presence of human remains.
The tank was full of water, and the dogs seemed to have hit on it quite a bit. Obviously, we were thinking to ourselves, okay, they might be dead bodies in this tank.
The tank is drained and examined, but nothing is found inside. Search teams scour the mountainside, but find no bodies.
I find it impossible for you to be able to hide your own body. Yes, you may be able to hide one or two that you'd obviously killed, but to hide your own body would be nearly impossible.
That conclusion brings a measure of relief to the Jamesons' friends and family, who have trouble believing Sherilyn capable of murder.
I don't think there was any way, even if Sherilyn was depressed, that she would shoot Bobby. I know they had a lot of arguments and they had fights about things, but she truly loved Bobby and Bobby loved her.
To help spread the word about the Jamesons, missing posters are created and distributed around southeastern Oklahoma.
There was effort made to get information out to the public and to let them know that they were missing.
We took the picture of Madison off of their cell phone that they had taken up on the mountain. We put her age, height, her hair, date of birth. We used the driver's license of Sherilyn and Bobby, and we done the same for them.
So anybody that walked by, you could see, hey, you know, I didn't know them, or, you know, I saw them the other day.
Although their focus shifts away from murder-suicide, investigators continue to uncover strange details about the Jamesons' lives. They discover that Bobby, and especially Sherilyn, had a strong interest in spirituality.
Sherilyn had some beliefs that were not commonly shared with other people, and I think she had a tendency to exaggerate them and go a little bit overboard with them.
In the weeks prior to their disappearance, the Jamesons attended prayer meetings conducted by a local preacher, who was later interviewed by investigators.
He was talking about them seeing spirits, that they came to him and was talking to him about seeing spirits.
The preacher tells investigators that Sherilyn said that angels were coming into their home in the form of children and interacting with her 6-year-old daughter.
I know that Sherilyn had said that Madison was talking to people that had died, and one of them was named Emily. I don't think it was someone dead. I think it was an imaginary being that she, you know, had, you know, to cope with some of the things that were going on in her life. You know, it's very hard for a small child to be somewhere where there's arguments going on.
The preacher also tells police that Bobby Jameson believed that he saw spirits on the roof of their lakeside Eufaula home. It's a disturbing revelation.
It was 3 or 4 spirits that were giving them trouble and mostly talking about them being on the roof. We had also found out from him that Bobby had asked him, okay, is there a special bullet that I can buy to kill these spirits?
That makes me sad. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what that would be about.
Friends and family are not clear on what Bobby may have been going through to explain such unusual behavior.
It's a mystery to me. I don't know where that came from, you know, and I don't know the minister. I don't know the church. I've never been there before. It just doesn't sound like him to say something like that.
According to police, Sherilyn had also spray-painted odd phrases on signs and buildings in their neighborhood, including the storage container they had sitting on their lakefront property.
Sherilyn had a cat that had passed away, and she believed that it had been poisoned, and that raised a lot of issues within the neighborhood.
The graffiti said something along the lines of witches don't like their cats being killed.
I know she's told the neighbors around here she's a witch, and come on in for some witch's brew, and I think it scared people off, but I think she just didn't want to be bothered by people.
Sherilyn used to tell me, if you have a problem with somebody, make them think you're crazy. The crazier they think you are, the more they'll leave you alone. It's true, it worked. You spray paint some crazy stuff on there and people think you are crazy. I don't think anybody bothered them after that.
For investigators, the clues and odd revelations about the Jamesons' lives are not adding up to a coherent whole.
When you do an investigation, one of the ways that most of us were taught, you actually get rid of each scenario that could have happened. So a process of elimination on it. And in this case, we haven't been able to completely eliminate anything.
This has been a very bizarre thing. I mean, there are so many pieces to this puzzle, and every day you find a new piece, something else comes up.
After the Jamesons have been missing for 7 days, a lead finally surfaces that appears to turn the investigation around. Law enforcement learns that the Jameson home is outfitted with surveillance cameras and that recordings were made up to the time of the family's disappearance.
Both cameras were pointed toward the driveway of the residence. We have the footage of their home surveillance that morning, them getting ready and preparing to come up to the mountain.
In the eerie-looking surveillance video recorded on the day they disappeared, the Jamesons are seen packing their truck.
The family was found going in and out of the home multiple times, back and forth to the car in somewhat of a trance-like state.
We found it odd that they had to go back and forth so many times. I would say safely each one of them, without it being an exaggeration, went 20 times back and forth. They never acknowledged each other as they were walking back and forth from the vehicle. Never acknowledged each other. It's like they were the only persons in the world.
Speculating that the Jamesons' behavior may indicate an involvement with drugs, Sheriff Beecham shows the recording to experts.
Also from their security cameras, trying to get an idea of what type of people they thought they were. It made me and the psychologist feel that they were on some type of drug at that time.
If the Jamesons were involved with drugs, in Latimer County, that usually means one thing.
We automatically assume here in southeastern Oklahoma, if you're on a drug, that it's methamphetamine because we have such a problem with it here.
Coming up, could a violent incident a month before the Jamesons disappeared be the key to solving the case?
Then she put the gun to his head and said, "You need to go. You need to leave right now and don't come back."
Get more Disappeared online at investigation.discovery.com. The Jameson family has been missing for 14 days. But now, a recovered surveillance video leads investigators to suspect a drug connection in their disappearance.
We felt that there was a possibility that Sherilyn and Bobby had been doing methamphetamines or other drugs by their behaviors on the video surveillance.
It can come in a powder form. It can come in a crystal form. They like to call it the redneck cocaine.
Some sort of drug connection could possibly help explain the bank bag with $32,000 found in the Jameson's truck.
In this area, you find that much money, automatically you start to think about drugs.
But the Jamesons' friends and family believe that connecting them to illicit drug use is both wrong and unfair.
I don't know anything about having drugs or any of that. People jump to conclusions. They don't know what's happening.
I feel like a lot of the things that could be helpful in this case are almost being used to make them seem like druggies or whatever, and they weren't. They weren't at all. Everyone is speculating as to what were they really doing up there. Well, they were looking at land. It doesn't mean that they were up to no good.
Family members can also explain the seemingly suspicious array of surveillance cameras on the house. Bobby's mother says they had nothing to do with drugs. The cameras were installed for personal reasons, involving her now deceased husband.
Surveillance cameras were put on the house for protection. My husband had threatened me several different times. He also threatened my son and Sherilyn. And I had the cameras installed. I'm the one that did that. I also had a security system put on my house because I was afraid. And it's hard to live through life being afraid.
FBI agents conduct a thorough search of the Jamesons' house and property.
There were no traces of methamphetamine in the home or in the vehicle.
As far as I know, the FBI did not find any drugs.
Investigators are unable to make a clear connection between the Jamesons' disappearance and drugs. But delving deeper into their personal lives, police uncover information that could explain some of Sherilyn's apparently erratic behavior.
After meeting with Sherilyn's mental health provider, we learned that she suffered from bipolar disorder and that she had been struggling for many years with the condition.
According to friends and family, Sherilyn didn't always stay on her prescribed medication.
It's a hard thing to accept that you have to take medication to be normal the rest of your life. She would do what a lot of depressed people do when you start feeling good because of the medication. Like, oh, I'm good now. And you get off the medication and then you're worse off because your brain's trying to catch up.
I mean, she was like two different people. When she was taking her meds and taking them properly, she would be the happiest person on earth.
Sherilyn's condition could explain some of the more unusual writings in her journal, including the hostile letter written to her husband that police found in the Jamesons' truck.
When she would go in the other state of her bipolarism, she would be angry, hateful, belittling herself.
Sherilyn didn't write a word unless she was writing what was going on in her head. And that's why the journal was so disturbed.
Despite Sherilyn's sometimes erratic behavior, investigators believe that her bipolar disorder played no part in the family's disappearance. According to friends and family, her illness and Bobby's chronic pain did create enormous tensions in their marriage. But they looked at moving to Panola Mountain as a second chance at happiness.
They were trying to make a go of it. They were trying to get back together. And I think they thought if they moved up there, they could, just start a new life. My son loved her very, very much, as well as he did his daughter, and she loved them back.
By November 1st, the family has been missing for more than 3 weeks. Investigators are stumped.
Most investigators would love to have the amount of evidence that we have. And the problem is that it leads us in every which direction.
Then, just when they are running out of angles, a stunning new lead surfaces. Police learn that a few months before they disappeared, Bobby and Sherilyn took in a boarder.
There was an individual that was living with them, and this individual was there to help work on the residents.
Because of his chronic back pain, Bobby thought having another set of hands around would ease the burden on both him and Sherilyn. But according to friends, the border began to make Sherilyn uncomfortable when Bobby wasn't around.
Sherilyn and Madison both felt very threatened by this fellow who had been staying with them.
Investigators learn of one incident that was especially disturbing to Sherilyn.
Bobby had left to go somewhere, and the man that was staying here sat down next to her real close and put his face right in her face and said, you know, I'm a white supremacist, and you keep talking about all this Indian blood you have. And I think anybody who's not pure white needs to die.
Sherilyn takes Madison away and returns with one of Bobby's guns.
She was scared for her child, and Bobby. And she pointed the gun at the guy and said, get off this property and don't come back.
Sherilyn fires live rounds near the border's feet to drive him away.
She's really torn up about that. She felt really bad about it. I mean, she was crying to me, telling me this and saying, I've never held a gun to anyone before.
Investigators learn that the man has an extensive police record.
Obviously, this person became a great interest to us.
If you threaten someone and then they make you leave at gunpoint, that's a pretty big indicator that you might be wanting to retaliate.
The FBI launches an investigation to identify and track down the former border.
The FBI felt that he quite possibly could have brought them harm.
Coming up, investigators zero in on the Jameson's border. What does he know about their disappearance?
This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated. Somebody knew they were going to be there that day, and they took advantage of that.
Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their daughter Madison have been missing for 3 weeks. But the investigation into their disappearance is finally working with a solid lead. Police learn that a month before they disappeared, a live-in handyman allegedly threatened Sherilyn's life. She forced him to leave their home at gunpoint. His current whereabouts are unknown.
We found out all the information we needed about the individual.
Investigators learn the border's name from a prescription bottle found in the Jameson's truck.
We put it out to the U.S. Marshals.
U.S. Marshals find the man living in Wilburton, Oklahoma, and detain him.
U.S. Marshals tracked him down, and the FBI did interview him.
In the interview, the former border is able to account for his time during the Jameson's disappearance. The FBI doesn't consider him to be a suspect. Investigators again find themselves back at square one.
I really don't know where to go from here other than each time that we get a lead, follow up on the lead.
Friends and family believe that despite the crushing challenges in their lives, the Jamesons were planning for a brighter future until something or someone got in their way.
They were trying to love each other the best they could, you know. But knowing all of that now, it really makes me sad because they didn't get that chance to start over fresh.
Over the weeks and months that follow, investigators check out each and every lead that comes their way.
There's a rumor of them being in trouble with, whether it be organized crime or just small-time gangs or crimes. That is all rumor. And we don't know any of that for a fact. But we can't get rid of that. So it's still there.
But the rumors don't lead to a break in the case. The FBI doesn't currently consider anyone to be a suspect in the Jamesons' disappearance.
At this time, we have no suspects. And until evidence comes to light to show differently, there are no suspects.
Sheriff Beecham believes it's probable that the Jamesons were kidnapped or taken by force. He just doesn't have the evidence to prove it.
Because of everything being left in there and the way the vehicle was parked, they got out of that vehicle after they were trying to leave the location because somebody had drove up there. Somebody had drove up there and blocked their path.
It's so rural up there that you wouldn't just cross paths. This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated. Somebody knew they were going to be there that day, and they took advantage of that.
Whether they made them leave by gunpoint, force, or they got in voluntarily, I don't know. And what happened from there, I don't know. But that is my current theory on what had happened.
Both family and investigators are frustrated by the magnitude of the mystery surround 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 mystery surround.
A sweet and beloved senior.
Margaret liked being out. She liked being around people.
She was very friendly, very outgoing.
Is viciously murdered in her own home.
Oh my Lord, it's her. And I pretty much lost it.
I actually thought I was going to get sick.
To be snuffed out in such a way is just horrific.
Police uncover a trail of suspects.
How would he know that information unless he was in the crime scene?
Having people know how she was found and even what she was wearing is very suspicious.
It just wasn't adding up. He was not being honest and something else was going on.
Before a disturbing discovery.
He was just photographing her in her own home.
Points to a deranged killer nobody saw coming.
I don't think anyone in law enforcement could have had any inkling of the outcome of this case.
This is sick. This is not a normal murder.
This wasn't a horror movie. This was actually happening.
Wadsworth, Ohio, a haven for families just outside Akron.
Wadsworth, a very quiet town. It's very community-oriented.
It's a great family community. It's very common for people not even to lock their doors because there's never a lot of crime that occurs right around in there.
On a Monday morning, April 9th, 2018, the peace is interrupted when police receive a call from a worried citizen.
Water Police.
Yes, this is Howard Leisure. My aunt lives on Portage Street. A friend of ours stopped over there yesterday to check on her, and she was nowhere to be found.
Okay.
He says papers were on the porch for the last 3 days.
What's her name?
Margaret Douglas.
Initially, the police department was contacted about Margaret being missing from her home.
We don't know where she's at. She's 98 years old.
Does she live there by herself?
She lives there by herself, yeah. And she never locks her house.
So our initial response was to look for Margaret to see if she had fallen inside her home and needed help. Patrol officers walked through it, yelling for her to see if she would answer.
We continued to canvass the neighborhood, and we did not locate her.
If her close friends, she's not with them, something's wrong.
We contacted area hospitals and looked in any possible place that she could be.
Margaret was just basically missing.
That evening, Howard and his wife, Cindy, head to Margaret's home to help police with the search.
They asked if we could come down and meet them at the house.
Howard and Cindy started to look for some items common for Margaret to have taken with her when she left. There were specific shoes that she would wear. They were looking for a little red wallet that she carried her money and her credit cards in when she left the home.
So Howard went to look in that front closet.
The clothes had dropped or slipped down that was piled in the top of the closet.
He said, "Oh, I found her shoe." He tried to pull the shoe out.
And I touched it, and it felt cold and clammy.
The shoe was still attached to Margaret, who was in the closet.
And I thought, oh my Lord, it's her. And I pretty much lost it. Something I'll never forget, I'm sorry. But to find her like that.
It was a terrible shock, especially for her nephew, Howard, and I just remember the look on his face.
I actually thought I was going to get sick. I think we were just so appalled and shocked that someone would kill her.
What motive could there be to kill a 98-year-old woman? What could she have done to anybody that would have resulted in that?
Margaret's home is declared a crime scene, and homicide detectives arrive.
Margaret was positioned with her head down in the corner and her backside kind of up in the air. Her underpants were torn inside the closet there. Her nightgown was all unsnapped, and her bra was pulled up. I immediately thought that there was a sexual element to the crime. There was a lot of trauma to Margaret's neck region. Somebody was able to strangle her, and my assumption was manually due to the lack of any ligature marks.
Looking at the condition of Margaret's body, rigor came and gone. You could look at the different lividity and the pulling of the blood inside the body to see it appeared she had been there for a few days.
As the forensics team gathers DNA and fingerprints, detectives search the house for further evidence.
Her wallet was not located, so that gave us an indication that maybe this was a burglary and they had made off with just the wallet. Margaret didn't always lock her doors, so we weren't surprised when we didn't find forced entry into her home.
Investigators find their first clue outside the home.
I observed a plastic food service glove on the back side of the house and collected the glove just in case that it was involved.
There was not a lot of physical evidence at the crime scene. Besides the glove, the missing wallet was something, but nothing that would direct us in a certain way.
Who would attack and kill a 98-year-old woman in her own home? As they set out for answers, detectives turn to Howard and Cindy to learn more about Margaret.
The best thing to do is to get to know your victim as best you can.
Born in Akron, Ohio in 1919, Margaret was known as a woman of strong character with a fiercely independent streak.
She knew what she wanted, and she wasn't afraid to go after what she wanted to get.
Margaret often told us about her days working at the O'Neills in downtown Akron. She liked being out, she liked being around people.
She was very friendly, very outgoing.
Margaret had very strong opinions, and she was certainly not afraid to tell you what her opinion was.
She was a pretty independent woman, let's put it that way.
After World War II, Margaret married the love of her life, Army veteran Donald Douglas.
If I saw Margaret, I saw Donald, her husband. They were made for each other. They just complemented each other.
The couple moved into the house that Margaret would live in for the rest of her life.
I think Margaret might have lived in that neighborhood close to 70 years.
It was Margaret and Donald's choice not to have any children, and they seemed extremely happy together.
They liked to travel together. They went to ball games. They enjoyed going to the Indians game.
When Donald passed away in the year 2000, Margaret chose to remain in her house, surrounded by friends and caring neighbors.
Margaret was a pretty good friend with the neighbors, David and his wife.
There was another neighbor across the street. Her name was Jan. They just sort of kept an eye on Margaret.
She knew all the kids in the neighborhood, but as she got older, she's got more restricted to the house. And that's when me and my wife stepped in at that point and started taking her shopping and doing things for her that is needed.
Margaret loved the fact that she was 98 years old, and she wanted to be 100. She truly loved life.
For someone to have lived such a wonderful, vibrant life, only to be snuffed out in such a way is just horrific. I have a grandmother that's similar in age. It's just very hit close to home.
The investigators were under a tremendous amount of pressure. Every one of them took it very personally, and I think every one of them wanted to find justice very quickly for the family.
At the onset, we had no clue. There was no direction.
Maybe it's financial. Maybe it was a relationship issue. Maybe it was an argument that went too far and something happened that they didn't expect. But at that stage in the investigation, you just don't know.
We need to start somewhere, so we start closest to her.
So that would include looking at Howard and Cindy.
We definitely leave everyone on the list until we can exclusively rule them out and have that be a certainty and not just a feeling.
Coming up, is Margaret's killer hiding in plain sight?
He knew details of where Margaret was found and in what state she was found.
He's come back to the scene of a crime.
Detectives unearth dark secrets.
We found a journal about a desire to kill people.
He was videotaping her while she slept, stalking his victim like an animal stalks its prey.
Leading to a killer no one saw coming.
This is somebody that's ultimately going to be a serial killer if he's not caught.
Police are investigating the murder of 98-year-old Margaret Douglas, whose body was discovered stuffed in a closet in her own home.
I just can't imagine a 98-year-old woman being that terrified and not knowing what to do. It's definitely one of the most traumatic things I've ever had to experience in my years with the Wadsworth Police Department.
Detectives begin by interviewing those closest to Margaret, her nephew Howard and his wife Cindy.
We fingerprint and get DNA from Cindy and Howard to show whether their fingerprints or DNA were on something that it should not have been on. We did subpoenas for phone records and also location data, GPS data, so we could tell their whereabouts during the time in question. Cindy and Howard lived approximately 30 or 40-minute drive away, but they would come into town a couple times a month to do her grocery shopping.
She always paid with cash. We swung down, went to the bank, she drew $200 out to go shopping with.
Police ask Howard about Margaret's finances. Was there anyone who stood to gain from her death?
Margaret was really in charge of her own finances. We did look into those accounts and check for activity. We were never able to locate any activity that was out of the normal.
Does she have a power of attorney or a will or anything then?
No. We've been telling her she needs a will, she needs this. She would never take the time to do it.
There was nobody that we could find that would have any financial gain from her death.
Could Howard or Cindy think of anyone who might wish to harm Margaret?
Any problems with her? Did she want to argue with people or anything like that? Nothing?
No, sweet old lady.
And nobody else, she didn't, have any problems with anybody that... Not that I know of. She was... Margaret bothered me. That's why it's so just horrible.
Detectives ask about others in close contact with Margaret. According to Howard and Cindy, the closest is Margaret's former neighbor, David Klinkenbeard.
Cindy and Howard did keep in contact with David, who was Margaret's main caregiver. David would come and check on her a couple of times a week just to see if she was okay and if she needed anything.
David has the most contact with her.
Yeah, he'd go every week, take her trash out, and then he'd put the can back in the next day. So.
After interviewing Howard and Cindy, detectives try to contact David, but he's not answering their calls.
There was some concern not being able to reach David, and that was troubling. We didn't have any other suspects. It made us wonder what was going on.
As detectives try to track David down, patrol officers continue to canvass Margaret's neighbors for information.
During the canvass, we did learn that there had been some vehicles in the neighborhood that had been rifled through, and small items were taken out, like change and things like that.
Is this somebody that was up by Margaret's house and found a crime of opportunity because it's somebody that they can maybe figure out lives alone?
As the canvass continues, officers notice someone watching the activity around Margaret's house.
I noticed a man outside smoking a cigarette, so I went out to make contact with him. This person ended up being David Klinkenbeard. He said that he used to live next door to Margaret. He kind of wanted to know what was going on.
He said he was essentially canvassing the neighborhood looking for anything that was suspicious.
David did strike me as odd at first. It was concerning to me that he was standing out there trying to determine what exactly we had found.
As David continues to talk, police grow increasingly suspicious.
He was kind of making comments about information that seemed strange that he would know about.
He knew details of where Margaret was found and in what state she was found. Having people know how she was found and even what she was wearing is very suspicious. You don't know where someone has gotten their information. Were they there? Were they involved in the murder?
With a growing list of questions about David, officers approach Margaret's neighbors for answers.
One of the neighbors had mentioned how they had seen David driving through the neighborhood, but didn't stop, just kind of drove through. So they thought that was kind of strange. Maybe he's coming back to the scene of a crime, whether he's driving back by because he knows what he did and he's having remorse, or maybe trying to get back inside there to get her body out of there and get rid of it, or to look to see if he left anything behind.
David told some of the neighbors that his fingerprints would be all over the house and he would have to get his fingerprints taken, which is not something that people usually say or think.
The next day, David's appearance in local news coverage of the murder raises further alarm bells.
I turned on the news and there he is on TV, talking to the reporters, putting himself out there.
Was this a guilty man's ploy to hide in plain sight?
That seemed out of sorts to us. Generally, when people are grieving a loss, their instinct is not to cooperate with the media, but David seemed very willing to speak with them.
All of these things added together are possible indicators of someone who is purposely trying to insert themselves in the investigation because they're involved in this investigation.
Could David have possibly been involved in Margaret's murder?
At that point, we had some questions about his actions and his knowledge of how Margaret was found.
He definitely became a main point of interest.
On April 11th, 2 days after finding Margaret's body in her own home, police bring her former neighbor, David Klinkenbeard, in for questioning.
David told us that he last saw Margaret when he was helping her with her trash can on Wednesday.
You didn't come by on Thursday or Friday, not till Sunday?
No, not till Sunday.
On Sunday, he had gone over to the house and he didn't locate her. He had some concerns that maybe she was upstairs in a state of undress and he didn't want to go up there himself. So he contacted Jan across the street.
And that's when you had Jan come over in case she was upstairs and not decent.
Yeah, Jan went up there and she wasn't up there, and then we looked in the closet up there.
Okay, your friend's missing. That'd be the last thing in your mind, whether they're dressed or not. You would go and look for them throughout the entire house, not go get somebody else.
As the interview continues, David's answers only raise further suspicion.
She likes to look nice, and she was a pretty woman.
Yeah.
When she was younger, she was a redhead.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was really, back then, she was really kind of, not thin then, but, you know, I was surprised how good she looked back then.
Some of the comments that he made about Margaret, in particular her physical appearance when she was younger, she had just been murdered, and here he is describing her figure and her body type in an interview.
The detective asked David about the calls he made when he couldn't find Margaret.
Oh, I want to use my cell phone to call Howard. I got his number on my phone.
Do you have your phone with you?
Yeah.
Would you mind if I had my computer guy just go through and write down the dates of your calls?
I have.
He said he must have left it at home and didn't have it on his person.
It seems strange because, you know, in this day and age, nobody goes anywhere without their cell phone. Their cell phone is always on them.
Investigators must now subpoena David's cell phone records. At the same time, they receive a forensics report from the crime scene.
DNA belonging to Margaret was found on the glove that was discovered outside of Margaret's house.
We believe that the suspect's DNA was on the inside of the glove.
Would you mind if I was able to get a sample of your DNA? We know you're supposed to be in the house. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Detectives send David's DNA to compare against that found inside the glove. While they wait for the results, they check David's cell phone data to verify his alibi.
We were able to go through his day-to-day life and see that he likely was not involved, but there was no concrete evidence that we were able to bring to light.
Unlike the phone records, the DNA findings are conclusive. David is not Margaret's killer.
David ended up being, in the end of all this thing, just a friend of hers that was not involved at all.
Sometimes he would say things that didn't really have an explanation. It just took the time and the effort to understand his involvement, and there was reasonable explanation for all of the things that we had concerns about. He just really cared about Margaret and really had concern that he would have an answer as to what happened.
We had to look at David as probably our #1 interest because obviously his strange comments in the beginning about his DNA and fingerprints, plus he's the one that saw her on a regular basis.
Up until that point where you reach a crossroads, you really do have to look at every tiny detail, every possibility.
Detectives turn their attention to the autopsy report, which paints a terrifying picture of Margaret's last moments.
The medical examiner's report on Margaret showed what kind of force was used to kill her in the end. She had contusions to her head, to her face. She had a fracture to her orbital socket. She had a fracture to her C7 vertebrae in her neck. It showed there was a compression there, which broke her neck.
Margaret was not a frail woman. Not just anyone would be able to manually strangle her.
While the autopsy finds no direct evidence of sexual assault, officers continue to suspect otherwise.
Why would her underwear be ripped off of her? They weren't like pulled off, they were torn.
There were other bodily fluids that were mixed in with the swabs from Margaret's body.
The fact that someone took Margaret in such a horrific manner was a very difficult thing to handle.
As homicide detectives regroup to search for new leads, patrol officers alert them to an unusual crime reported in the early morning hours of April 8th, the day before Margaret's body is discovered.
There was a report of a carjacking very near the scene of Margaret Douglas's home. In a community like Wadsworth, we don't have carjackings. That's not a normal call for us.
They happened in such time close to one another that we had to wonder if they were related.
The carjacking victim is a local man named Paul Shalott.
Paul had reported he was driving along and he happened to notice a 19, 20-year-old man limping, like having trouble walking up the street.
Paul had reported to us that he was just being a good Samaritan and picking somebody up that he thought to be injured.
So as he went out to help him, he said the gentleman just slid into the driver's seat and then locked the doors, wouldn't let him in, and took off with his car.
Officers grow suspicious when they quickly locate Paul's car near the site of the carjacking.
The car was found very quickly, and it was found right there in the same area it was taken.
Literally, like, not even a block away from where he had picked this gentleman up, supposedly, and lost his car.
This happened at a building that had cameras on the outside, so we wanted to kind of investigate Paul's story because it just didn't seem quite right. You could see on the video that Paul had been with what appeared to be a young man. The young man was not limping. He did not seem to be injured in any way.
Paul's initial report did not match anything that video said. It just wasn't adding up. He was not being honest and something else was going on.
Why had Paul lied to police? And who was the young man seen in security footage? Had one of them gone on to do something unthinkable?
We had the carjacking, and then we had Margaret's disappearance. It just started making me think a little bit, could this be the guy that could be involved?
Police investigating the murder of 98-year-old Margaret Douglas have a potential new lead after learning of an alleged carjacking in her quiet neighborhood.
Somebody that's willing to perpetrate a crime such as a carjacking makes you really wonder, is this related to a murder that's just happened a couple blocks away?
But when security video proves the victim, Paul Shalott, has lied to police, detectives demand answers.
When I interviewed Paul to get the whole story, he was very nervous, and then he finally started telling us the truth about how he came to be in that area and what really happened. He was on an app trying to meet somebody, and he did come across somebody. He said he worked for a church, and he didn't want them to find out that he's using a site to try to meet up with young men. He didn't want to admit it right away, but they started getting involved sexually in the car. The male subject he picked up, I guess, started getting upset that things weren't going his way.
The young man that he met up with just kind of snapped and took the car, not what Paul had expected when he met this person online.
With Paul finally being honest, detectives change course and ask if he knows anything about the murder of Margaret Douglas.
He was aware of what had happened and that she was a victim of a homicide. But Paul did not know Margaret at all.
He had no ties to her and real no ties even in that neighborhood. He was just there basically to meet up with somebody that night. Then I started thinking, well, now we need to know who was driving that car, who carjacked him.
Paul was asked for the account information for the app that he used to meet this person on.
He said he couldn't remember the email he used or the password he used to get in there.
Paul was embarrassed about what he had let happen and the fact that he was involved with a young man. He had deleted everything from his phone that was relative to that. We weren't able to recover any of that information.
So we had no way of proving or figuring out who it was that he may have met up with that night.
After hitting another dead lead, frustrated investigators know that public fear is only growing.
There was definitely some fear. There were people that would normally stroll down the street, walk their dogs, let their kids play outside unsupervised, and things like that weren't happening after Margaret's discovery.
And the emotions for everybody were really high and heightened. They're all locking their doors now, and they're really watching for everything. So it was definitely a shock to all of them.
With the community on edge, Margaret's family continues to struggle with their loss.
The hardest part going through all this is the time-consuming and the worrying and waiting for the outcome and you're not sure what's going to happen.
That was hard. You know, none of us are patient, and we all want to know what happened here, why someone would do this.
The reason you're doing what you're doing is for the victim. You want somebody to be held responsible for what they've done.
Believing that the carjacker may be a serial criminal, police take a closer look at the petty crimes reported around Margaret's neighborhood.
The crimes all took place in just a few block area.
Is there somebody in this neighborhood that's committing a whole bunch of crimes for some reason, because we weren't seeing those crimes spreading out throughout the city like we typically would?
You have to wonder if the person who's committing these petty crimes has escalated to commit something more horrific.
On the night of April 13th, 4 days after the discovery of Margaret's body, police received several calls about two young men.
We had received a lot of different calls where people had seen two male subjects running around, creating mischief, doing things at the park, doing things at the church, and in cars.
A couple of young males were taking some type of device that had wheels on the bottom and hanging out in one of the parking lots.
That same night, police respond to a call that changes everything.
It was reported to us that there had been a break-in to a trailer that was at a construction site.
When officers investigate, they get a huge break.
Someone had left their cell phone behind at the trailer.
Does the phone belong to the person responsible for the neighborhood crime spree, including Margaret's murder? Investigators used forensic software to unlock the phone.
The phone came back to a subject that we had been known in our area for different car break-ins and little thefts from cars that happened in our city, and especially over in that area.
He was identified by one of our officers as Zach Franz. Zach was known to us, and he did have a troubled past. He had been in some more serious trouble, and we were all familiar with him. At this point, we thought that we really needed to bring Zach in and talk to him about what he had been doing that night. Zach was found sleeping in his car at the high school in the parking lot.
As officers bring Zach into the station for an interview, something immediately catches their attention.
Zach had some scratches on his legs, which made me wonder where those came from.
Are they defensive wounds from somebody fighting back against you and scratching you that way? Could they be from something simple, explainable, or evidence into what we were looking into with regards to Margaret Douglas?
Police investigating the murder of Margaret Douglas have connected local teen Zach Thronson to a spate of crimes near her home.
With the carjacking, we know there was supposed to be a young male. Now we have Zach running around, committing these little crimes, all within the same area around the same time frame.
His phone was left behind at the trailer, so we knew for sure that he was involved in the crimes that were all seemingly tied together.
Detectives cut to the chase and ask Zach if he killed Margaret Douglas.
Zach, he owned up for the little things he did, but he denied any knowledge of it or being involved at all.
Detectives steer the interview to the identity of the teen seen with Zach in security footage.
He said that he was out with his friend Gavin Ramsey, and that everything that had happened was all Gavin's idea. Gavin had been the one that was trying to break into the trailer, and that he was just standing by and watching it happen, just a presence during the time that Gavin was committing all the other petty crimes. Zach was definitely distancing himself, so there was some concern that he wasn't being honest about everything that they had done.
For the moment, police decide not to charge Zach until they interview his friend, Gavin Ramsey.
Gavin had been in trouble before, and his mom had dealt with that. She was going to hold him accountable for the things he had done. We talked about the trailer, and I just let him know that we knew he was there because Zach had told us that he was there. Property-type crimes and less serious crimes is what we talked about at first.
That's just to see, is he going to own up to that? And then we'd continue from there into something more serious.
You guys didn't take anything? Did you rummage through glove boxes or anything?
Maybe like 50 times, but other than that, seriously nothing.
He admitted to all of them. He would rifle through cars and take things that weren't of a lot of value, just to take things.
Gavin told us during the interview, he does it for a rush, so it wasn't about money or anything.
I think the reason that he was so willing to admit to these lesser offenses is to kind of distance himself and clear his name from anything else I might want to talk to him about.
Now, detectives turn their questions to more serious crimes.
We had a carjacking.
Oh my God.
And the suspect is a young white male with a nice complexion and blue eyes. Is that you?
Gavin's demeanor changed substantially when I started to ask him about the carjacking.
What's upsetting you so much? Is there something else you need to tell us?
You've already gotten yourself in trouble, so.
I know, and I don't need I don't know what to say.
Before answering further questions, Gavin asks to speak with a detective alone.
Can you two actually leave for a second? What's that? Can you two actually leave? So I can talk to her? Yeah.
Sure.
So when his mom stepped out,
The carjacking, it was me, I'm gonna be honest about it, but the way that he explained it, that guy, that's not right.
he openly admitted that he was the one who did the carjacking, but he didn't really want to talk about the sexual part of what happened in there.
You guys didn't talk about what kind of sex you were gonna have, or?
No, I don't know, it's not something I'm interested in, just the act of him getting the payback, I guess, I don't know, that's, like, it's karma, really. Like, if you're gonna do that, then I'm gonna rob you.
Gavin denies that he was truly interested in meeting up with Paul for any reason other than to catfish him or to teach him a lesson.
This is a kid that's admitting to going around breaking into cars, and it's not for theft, it's for a rush, so we know he's after the adrenaline. What else could he have possibly done?
With Gavin admitting to the carjacking, the interview turns to questions about Margaret Douglas.
I specifically asked him if he had murdered Margaret, and he denied it.
There's no reason that we would find your DNA inside her house because we swabbed the hell out of that house.
You shouldn't.
I mean, if you've never been in there, then obviously you wouldn't. But, I mean, You name it. We swabbed it, we took it. I'm sure you know we were there all night.
Yeah.
He was hiding something. There was more to be said. I didn't feel that this avenue had been exhausted with him. This was something that we probably needed to revisit, maybe from another direction.
For now, detectives allow Gavin to leave with his mother.
At this point, we have nothing other than the petty crimes, which are handled through juvenile court, so we wouldn't actually take him into custody to hold him.
But they have one request for Gavin's mother.
I let her know that we had concerns and that I would like to look at his phone. I was expecting to find information about how maybe Gavin was victimized.
Instead, what officers find on Gavin's phone changes everything.
Officer Cooper discovered Google-type searches, murder in Wadsworth, Margaret Douglas investigation, Wadsworth PD reports on homicide investigation.
Then, detectives find something they never would have imagined.
There were actually photos and videos of Margaret Douglas.
Timestamps show that the images were recorded in the early morning hours of Friday, April 6th.
She obviously didn't know he was there, and he was just photographing her from a vantage point in her own home. There was clearly a point in time where she realized that someone was in her home and was startled.
Nothing can prepare investigators for what they see next.
I was absolutely shocked that a child could imagine doing this to another human being. This wasn't a horror movie. This was actually happening.
Detectives investigating the murder of 98-year-old Margaret Douglas have found disturbing evidence on a phone belonging to 17-year-old Gavin Ramsey.
The first thought in my mind was, he knows we're going to discover this. And I could just imagine him fleeing.
Police move quickly to take Gavin into custody.
Once we picked him up, I briefly told his mom that we had discovered evidence on his phone and that we were going to take him back to the police department. It was definitely not the easiest interview that I had ever done.
I came up onto the porch, and I didn't even know what I was going to do. I don't know, I probably going into the house is like the biggest adrenaline rush I could get. So then I tried the doorknob, and that just happened to be unlocked.
He was videotaping her while she slept, stalking his victim like an animal stalks its prey.
So how long do you think you were in the house before you woke her up?
I don't know, probably like 10, 15 minutes.
You could see in some of the photos the obvious horror on her face as to what was happening.
And then from the time you woke her up to the time you ended up on top of her, how long did that whole part take?
Oh, it's probably like 5 minutes.
He had used both hands to squeeze her neck and push her neck back against the floor, strangling her. He said that once he realized the gravity of what he was doing, it was too late, that she was already gone.
For officers, the most disturbing questions involve what Gavin did after killing Margaret.
When I saw him, it was just like, this is sick. This is not a normal murder.
The sexual nature of his actions was kind of a topic that he was not willing to talk about.
He degraded her by using her for sexual things and videotaping and taking pictures. He'd actually been in there with her for a while.
And then I checked my phone, and it said it was like 4 something, and I knew my mom had to get up at 5 for work.
So he takes the body, finds the closet, because he has to get home. He throws in there to hide her because I don't want anybody to find her. I don't want anybody to know it's me.
But was Margaret simply a random victim of Gavin's need for a rush? Or had he known her better than he'd initially let on?
Gavin lived very close to Margaret Douglas, right around the corner from her house.
Gavin had actually been to her house before, asking her about maybe cutting her grass, raking leaves, or even, shoveling snow. He was out looking for little odd jobs around the neighborhood.
The thought in the back of my mind was that Gavin had observed Margaret regularly and actually thought about the things that he would like to do and that she would make a good victim.
Police arrest Gavin Ramsey for the murder of Margaret Douglas and get a search warrant for his bedroom.
We found gloves matching the same style and type of glove that was found at the scene.
In one of his drawers, I discovered Margaret's red wallet.
Detectives then make an even more disturbing find.
We also found a journal that had some writings about fantasies about murder. He had written almost like a book report on different serial killers. After reading those, there was no doubt in my mind that Gavin would kill again if he had the opportunity. This is something that he enjoys, that he finds pleasure in.
This is somebody that's ultimately going to be a serial killer if he's not caught.
Because of the heinous nature of the crime, the juvenile penal system is not equipped to deal with an individual such as Gavin Ramsey.
Gavin was ultimately charged as an adult with aggravated murder, 2 other counts of murder, burglary, and abuse of a corpse.
We requested that Mr. Ramsey receive the harshest penalty that the law would allow.
Found guilty on all charges, Gavin is sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of Margaret Douglas.
When I watched Gavin Ramsey at the sentencing, I still felt in my mind that he doesn't understand the gravity of what he's done. There's still no remorse there.
You would like to think that the world is full of people like you and I, and don't want to think that of such a young person able to act out something that you would only see in a horror movie.
I was shocked to find out that it was a young person who was still in high school that would do something like this.
To murder somebody who's 98 years old, to think you could shove a body in that closet. I just can't even.
It absolutely made me think of my own grandma. I just could not imagine her living such a wonderful life and having it end in such a horrific way.
Despite the horror of Margaret's death, her family honors her memory by thinking of her remarkable life.
Margaret gave you an inspiration that you can still be 98 years old and be very functional, live in your own home, take care of yourself. She, to me, was just an inspiration.
She led a full life.
When someone stormed out, turned their phone off and not told them what happened.
If Kaye had seen or knew what we were going through, she would have got in contact somehow.
The tone of the investigation changed from being a missing person investigation to something more sinister.
Something seems to have happened to one child. Will this happen to mine?
I honestly can't remember. I've been drinking. We'd all been drinking.
It is every parent's worst nightmare.
Right in the centre of England lies the village of Measham. Close enough to the hustle and bustle of major cities, but surrounded by beautiful countryside.
I grew up in Measham. It's a small village. You've got your little high street. It's got the butchers, the bakers, the hardware store, and everybody knows who your mum and dad is and, what they do, who everyone is, really. It's a little community in that respect.
It's got 2 lovely primary schools. Generally, everyone would see Measham as a safe place to be and a good place to live.
For Stephanie Haywood, it seemed like the perfect place to raise a young family.
When I moved to Measham, I had 3 children. Kyle, Kaylee and Helen. Kyle was like the father figure. Kaylee, she was just... she was very family oriented. She loved her brothers. And Callan, he was only young, so he was the baby of the family. Kaylee was always mothering him.
Being the only daughter in the family, Kaylee was particularly close to her mum, Stephanie.
I spent more time with her growing up, because she was my only girl, so we did girly things together. Kaylee was happy, bubbly, often mouthy. She'd stand her ground. She loved being at home. She was happy, so happy.
Despite growing up in a happy, loving home, Kaylee had her troubles at school.
As she got older, she was quite big built, and she had some issues. She was bullied. Girls would often call her nasty names. So it came to the point where she didn't want to go to school. The particular school that she was at, she was bullied on a daily basis. I tried to say, try and ignore, but it was an emotional time for her. She was becoming a teenager. She didn't want to get out of bed. She didn't want to leave the house.
The bullying only got worse for Kaylee, and it wasn't long before it became physical.
She was spat at, she got bottles of water tipped on her. On the school bus, it was in the house, she'd come in. She couldn't get her words out because she was crying. She said she wasn't taking it no more. And that's the point. That was the point I said, no more. When it got physical, we've moved her from that school.
Freed from her tormentors, Kaylee was finally able to have a fresh start and quickly made new friends.
I've never seen such a happy teenager. She wasn't bullied. She thrived to go to school and be with her friends. It was lovely to see. She became friends with particularly one girl, and they was together like glue. They'd go swimming together, they would go shopping together, they would walk miles together. They were like 2 sisters. It was so nice to see them both together, so happy, so close. It was lovely. On Friday the 13th of November, just after school time had finished, Kaye came down and said, "Can I go and stop at my friend's house?" As of every other weekend she'd done. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. So we agreed to let her go. She went over to her friend's house about 20 to 6 that night. Martin, her dad, took her over and dropped her at the swimming bath where her friend swims every week. Gave her a hug and a kiss and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And that was that.
The following morning, 15-year-old Kaylee contacts mum Stephanie.
Kaylee stayed into the Saturday and she asked her mum via message whether she could stay on a bit longer.
I replied, "Yes, not a problem, see you tomorrow." You know, she was a teenager. I was so glad to see her getting out there, enjoying what teenagers should do.
The next day, Stephanie receives a phone call, and life for this family was about to change forever.
Got up at around 10 to 9. 20 past 9, I had a phone call of Kaylee's friend asking if Kaylee's at home. I then replied, "No, she's not at home, she should be at your house." "What's going on?" She said, her friend said, "Kaylee's phone has been found in Ipswich Village. It's broken."
Kaylee's friend told Stephanie that her daughter's phone had been found by a builder passing through the village.
He managed to reunite that phone by looking at it with Kaylee's friend. And from there, a call was made to Stephanie, Kaylee's mum. Stephanie actually thought Kaye was staying with the friend who was calling her. So immediately she was alarmed to find that wasn't the case.
Panic then set in. If Kaye is not at home and not with her friend, where is she? So I said to her friend, "When did you last see Kaye, be honest?" And she said, "I last seen her on Thursday." I started calling people to see if they'd seen her. And Kaylee's auntie, no, she did nothing. So I rang Kaylee's dad and So he advised me to phone the police, and that's what I did.
Concerned with the disappearance of a 15-year-old, police issue a missing person appeal to the public.
The first I heard about Kaye Haywood was when I understood there'd been a missing girl from the village. So we got a story out there. As a newspaper, we do get a lot of missing person appeals, people from all different backgrounds, but quite often you get teenage children involved in them that have gone absent for whatever reason. There was nothing to suggest Kaye Haywood's situation was anything more sinister or different at that stage.
Statistically, 98% of missing children are found safe and well. And having texted her mum on the Saturday morning, there is hope that Kaylee's disappearance is easily explained.
Usually when somebody's reported missing, they're found very, very quickly, often within an hour or two of being reported. Kaye was a 15-year-old girl, fairly streetwise, able to look after herself. Her parents had trusted her, like many other parents, to go and stay around a friend's house for a couple of nights that weekend. In many of these reports, that the person can be actually quite nearby. Sometimes they can even be hiding, on purpose.
And yeah, they could have gone and stayed with a friend and turned their phone off and not told them what happened. You speculate about where they could be, what they could have done, if they'd gone to see somebody, not told them where they've gone, had an argument with someone, stormed out.
But several hours go by. There is still no sign of Kaye, and concern builds.
The level of risk initially might not have been all that high, but then the officers start to look into the circumstances that they're being presented with, and what we have here is we have a phone that's been found by a member of the public. We have a friend with whom Kaye is meant to be staying that weekend. What that does to the level of risk is it immediately elevates it and raises the cause for concern. So those officers start to look at what other resources are going to be needed here.
15-year-old schoolgirl Kaye Haywood told family she was spending the weekend with a friend in the picturesque village of Ibstock. But when her mobile is discovered broken, and her friend reveals she's not seen Kaye in days, concern starts to mount, and police visit Kaylee's mum.
They just kept reassuring me that we've got it covered. We've got officers out there trying to reassure me that she'll be home. I didn't know what to think. I didn't think good. If Kaye had seen or knew that she knew what we were going through, if she could have got home in any way, she would have got home. She would have got in contact somehow.
News of Kaylee's disappearance quickly spreads across the village.
I got an urgent phone call to say that a young teenager had gone missing. My first reaction when I heard was, did I know the girl? And that was a really awful feeling to think I might have known the person and the family concerned. When I had the name, I realised, yes, I did know them. The reaction was, this is very close.
Police have to explore the possibility she was running away from some personal troubles.
They asked, did she leave the house? Was she upset when she left the house? Was she happy when she left the house? We told them that she was happy. She was just a normal Kaye.
There are all sorts of reasons why they go missing for a few hours or maybe even more than a day. And they're often related to boyfriends and girlfriends, related to bullying and school and things like that.
So, obviously she went missing on a Friday and it became more and more public over the weekend. It wasn't until getting into the office on the Monday that things started to sort of progress a lot faster. Things began to move a bit faster and more people were getting in contact to suggest that perhaps there was something more afoot.
For Kaylee's mum and dad, facing every parent's worst nightmare, they still hope she is just missing. But as hours of searching turn into days, the realization something far more sinister may have happened dawns.
There was a vigil held in church and people were queuing to come in. And indeed the family came to that because, yes, everyone was hoping that she would be found alive and well. And there was a constant stream of people going through to say quiet prayers on their own and to light a candle.
With every hour being crucial, the search for Kaye intensifies.
We had upwards of 400 police trained search personnel working to, a plan of how we were going to try and find Kaye.
We had police scouring roadsides. Roads were being shut to allow police to go combing through the countryside and the villages. Included dog units. There were vehicle upon vehicle upon vehicle popped around. And I understand a drone was deployed at one point as well to help with the search.
They began to speak to neighbours, retrace footsteps, check mobile phone signals. People were out in force helping to try and find her.
We had people constantly coming, volunteering, people in the community wanting to do anything they could to help.
Despite their search efforts, there is no sign of Kaye.
With a couple of days starting to pass and the increased police presence, I think fears did begin to grow pretty quickly that something pretty nasty had happened.
Parents were obviously concerned, as parents always are, when something seems to have happened to one child. Will this happen to mine?
With a significant police presence causing a stir in the community, it isn't long before the national news descends on the quiet villages of Measham and Ibstock.
Police was everywhere. There was camera crews, there was everything everywhere.
There was a lot of interest in the Kaye Haywood case from the national papers. As a local paper that reports on the patch, you only get these sorts of stories once or twice where the whole Fleet Street national media descends on an area. Satellite vans parked up, reporters in the streets doing broadcasts. And I don't think I've ever seen that since in Measham or Ibstock.
With no sign of Kaye in the local area, officers take a closer look at her home life, and more importantly, if she has any secrets.
One of the things, and one of the really key things that they did, was to look at social media. And Stephanie immediately told them that Kaye was an avid user of Facebook. So they were able to get into Kaylee's Facebook account with Stephanie's help, and straight away what hit them in the face was the fact that she had been communicating for what looked like about 2 weeks with a person. And what then became a matter of great concern was the fact that Stephanie Haywood and nobody else in the home there had any idea who this individual was.
Police trawl through hundreds of messages between Kaye and her new Facebook friend, Luke Harlow.
The first message was the 31st of October 2015. Very quickly, he asked for her mobile and they happily swapped mobile numbers. The messages were initially, "Hi, who are you? How do you know me?" And then within an instant, he was calling her babe and asking her whether she had a boyfriend. She didn't. He was saying she was far too pretty not to have a boyfriend, which shows that he'd seen a photograph of her. He was calling her babe and his princess.
So who is Luke Harlow? And could he be Kaylee's secret boyfriend?
He had his own housing association property in Ibstock, so Luke Harlow was not a child, and that increases the worry and the concern about Kaylee's well-being.
But as police delve deeper into the messages, they discover something which changes the course of the investigation.
And crucially, it showed that they were planning to meet up on the Friday night when Kaye had supposedly gone to stay with a friend.
Officers immediately swarm Luke Harlow's home in Ibstock, and surprisingly, he is happy to cooperate and help police with their inquiries at the station.
He was more than willing to speak to the officers.
Luke Harlow is interviewed as a witness, with hopes he can help with information into Kaylee's disappearance.
How did you become friends on Facebook? How did that come about? I can't remember if I added her or she added me. I'm not 100% sure. But like, I've got loads of people on it, and I have a habit of accepting anyone who tries, you know what I mean, regardless of whether the name rings a bell or anything. I've got like 2,000 odd people. But I'm not sure whether she added me or I added her, but basically as soon as we were friends on here, we just started talking, just like, oh hey, how are you? And then like, where are you from? Blah, How blah, long blah. ago was that?
Not long ago, only about, I'd say, roughly a month. They were able to ask him about the messages between him and Kaylee, and he immediately said, yeah, Kaylee had stayed at his house on the Friday and the Saturday.
How old are you?
27.
How old is she?
Yeah, well, I obviously feel bad, though.
Why do you feel bad?
Because she's too young.
For what?
For coming and staying by mine for starting up.
While Luke admits Kaylee had spent the night at his, he tells police he has no idea where she went to afterwards, that the messages between them are a huge red flag to police.
It was quite clear they'd become quite close during the messaging. It was quite clear that some of the messages were of a sexual nature.
And what else?
One other stuff.
What's the other stuff?
I don't know.
What did you get up to?
We did some stuff.
Following this shocking revelation, police now suspect Harlow of grooming 15-year-old Kaylee for sex.
The police turned around to us and said, we believe we know where Kaylee was and has been. My gut reaction, I cried. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what had happened to her. Why was she where she was? Why had she lied? Why had she put herself in this danger?
Police now know where Kaylee really was on the nights of 13th and 14th of November. But is she still at Luke Harlow's flat?
It was a kind of maisonette where you go in the door and the bedroom and the bathroom are downstairs, and then you go upstairs to like a lounge and kitchen area. He let the officers in to search that. Kaylee wasn't there.
With no sign of Kaylee at his home, questioning of Luke Harlow intensifies. Harlow tells police that on Saturday night, he ran out of alcohol for him and Kaylee. So he went to his neighbours, a man called Stephen Beedman.
Stephen Beedman lived 10 paces away from Luke Harlow. And when Luke Harlow ran out of booze, he popped round to Beedman's flat to see whether he had any. I think he was looking for some mixers to go with a spirit that he had. Beedman didn't have any, and the two of them went off to get drink from an off-licence.
On their return, Luke invites his neighbour back to his home to join the party.
Where it gets really worrying is when Harlow tells them that on the Saturday night, at about midnight, he'd had plenty to drink and he decided he was going to go to bed. And when he did that, he left Beedman and Kaylee in the lounge at his home address. When he got up the next morning, neither of them were there.
In November 2015, Leicestershire police have discovered that far from spending the weekend with a school friend, missing teen Kaye Haywood was at the flat of 27-year-old Luke Harlow. Harlow had contacted the 15-year-old via social media just 13 days before. But on the Saturday night, Harlow invited his friend and neighbour over, a man called Stephen Beedman.
Stephen Beedman was a landscape gardener. He was known and seen to be clean and tidy. He was quite well thought of, I think, in the local area for his work.
Detectives are curious as to the relationship between both men.
It wasn't quite clear what the friendship related to, but they certainly drank together, and the friendship seemed to be of fairly long-standing nature.
Until Luke Harlow mentioned Stephen Beedman, he wasn't on the police radar. He wasn't mentioned in any of the social media messages between Kaye and Harlow.
It's very difficult to be certain as to what happened when they got back to the flat. Luke Harlow claimed that it all had been well, and he hadn't known anything about what had happened to her or his friend.
With Luke maintaining he had gone to bed, leaving her with Stephen, police need to find him to see if he holds the key to the teenager's whereabouts.
It was easy to find his address. It was right next door to Harlow's. The problem was, Beedman wasn't at his address at that time either. He'd gone off to some place that the officers didn't know where.
With the likelihood of Stephen Beedman on the run, the search for him intensifies.
Detectives dealing with this matter now are getting increasingly more and more concerned for Kaye. Kaye is still missing. Stephen Beedman has still not been found. The police officers had to try and find out information from neighbours on police intelligence systems to see whether there was any trace of him.
But while detectives speak to Stephen's neighbours about clues to his whereabouts, they quickly learn of some shocking information about the Saturday night.
Neighbours heard banging and crashing and screaming. The banging and crashing happened 9, 10 o'clock at night. But the next person that was aware of something going on was a neighbour who looked out of his window in the very early hours of the morning. And he saw what he thought initially was a police officer restraining somebody on the path. He then realised it wasn't a police officer and thought it was a young couple having a tiff. But what he saw was the man struggling with the woman, and then the woman walking off with him, arm in arm.
Was this Kaye? And was the gentleman Stephen? Concern for the teenager mounts, and the hunt for Stephen Beedman intensifies. Police swoop on an address linked to a relative of Stephen's, and he is arrested.
When they first saw Beedman, his face was all bashed about.
Beedman had got 3 distinctive, fresh-looking injuries to his face. One to his forehead, one on his nose, and one on his chin. That rang alarm bells. The markings didn't look like natural defects to his face. It's an important discovery, and it's something that needs to be investigated with Stephen Beedman in custody.
We don't know where Kaye is. We want to give you an opportunity, if you indeed know where she is, to tell us right now at the beginning of the day.
No, I don't.
You don't know where she is?
I don't know where she is. I left on Saturday night. At 7 o'clock. And then about 4 hours. And she was that drunk, she I couldn't get much conversation out of her.
Beedman's account had some similarities to Harlow's, except to say that when it got to the midnight point where Harlow said he went to bed, Beedman didn't concur with that.
I went round, had a few drinks and stuff, and I left about 12 o'clock.
He said, no, I went home, I left the 2 of them there on the sofa at Harlow's house, and I went back around the corner to my place, and I've not seen Kaye since. With the 2 divergent accounts, it's clear that either one, or both of them, is not telling the truth.
While detectives continue to interview Stephen, officers search his home, yet there is no sign of Kaye. But they soon receive a call from a member of the public.
This was just an odd fenced-off area of vegetation. A dog walker's come walking along this path and just seen a bra sitting on top of the vegetation. Did not fit with the environment, and that bra was recovered. What came back was the news we just didn't want. That Kaye had a bra of that make, of that size, of that colour, and the bra wasn't at home.
Detectives search Stephen's home for more of Kaye's clothing. Despite no further discoveries, Officers realise Stephen may have another hiding spot.
Stephen Beadman appeared to have a lockup about 8 or 10 miles away from Ibstock. So officers very quickly went to that lockup, but there was nothing suspicious in there. It was all as it should be.
Officers continue to search the rest of the facility and soon discover something which changes the course of the investigation.
At the site was a big skip, like an industrial waste bin. Lifted up the lid and found that most of the rubbish in there was stuff that had been placed in black bin liners. And on top of the black bin liners were 2 other items, a bag and a top, which looked completely out of place.
They brought me some goods for me to look at to see. I believe that there was Kaylee's, and in one of the skips there was items of Kaylee's. Clothing in hedgerows, all belonged to Kaye. I didn't know what to think.
The discovery of Kaylee's clothes clearly puts Beadman firmly in the frame for her disappearance. And there's something else they find which they believe links Beadman's facial injuries to a crime.
Stephen Beadman saying that he'd sustained his injuries whilst working on a farm in Belton. What we found at the farm location was a quantity of clothing, some of which was blood-stained. This looked identical to the one Stephen Beadman was wearing on the CCTV pictures from the co-op in Ibstock on the Saturday night.
Despite being confronted with the latest evidence, Stephen Beadman continues to deny any knowledge concerning the items. And more importantly, Kaylee's whereabouts.
I honestly can't remember. I've been drinking. We'd all been drinking.
But several days into the investigation, things take a dramatic turn.
On the Wednesday evening, he asked if he could speak to his appropriate adult in private. As a result of that conversation, the appropriate adult said that they could no longer perform that role because Beadman had told them that he knew where Kaye was.
Stephen goes on to tell police that Kaye is hidden in an open area across the road from Sants Valley Park.
So over behind me, where the row of trees are, is a disused railway line.
Officers went out in the dead of night, as it happens, and some of the senior officers from the case were out searching the heavily overgrown area.
In the back of your mind, you're thinking that there is a chance and that you could just find her clinging on to life and you will be able to do something about it.
The officers search for hours late into the night.
So we reached a point we couldn't find Kaye. We were trying to follow the instructions Beadman was giving to the interviewing officers. It was pitch black and raining. You can't search in the dark. But the 4 of us stood here together and said, well, we can't go anywhere. We need to carry on until it's light. And we'd all agreed together that we had to do that.
But at 10:10 that evening, one of the team makes a shocking discovery.
He shouted to the 4 of us as we walked through some quite dense undergrowth. We went over to him and Kaye lay on an embankment. Slightly twisted position, half on her back and half on her side. Naked, save for one sock. And of course, dead.
Confronted with the worst case scenario, officers need to inform Kaylee's family.
My friend was in the kitchen at the time, and she just said I howled. All she could hear was a howl from the living room. I was speechless, I couldn't speak. Martin was the same. We just broke. We physically couldn't speak. I was physically sick. My emotions were everywhere. I didn't want to believe it. I just told everyone to get out. It was horrible.
Kaylee's parents, Stephanie and Martin, now have the daunting task of identifying their daughter.
The identification was done through forensic means. The injuries to her head and her face were so horrific.
They said, you're not going to be able to see Kaye, she's too damaged. but we can arrange for you to go and hold her hand. So that was another bang to me. We wasn't allowed to see, send her off, see her and say goodbye. They damaged her too much for us to do that. All we was allowed to do was hold her hand. We wasn't allowed to say goodbye, as a normal family would. It was horrible.
The devastating news spreads across the village.
Having reported on many missing persons cases, you always go into them with a lump in your throat. You always hope for the best. You always hope it's going to be the one that you have to take the appeal down after 20 minutes because the police have rung and said, they've been found safe and well, stand down everybody. Sadly, it doesn't always happen like that, and it is every parent's worst nightmare.
The village were obviously shocked. You see things like this on the television and you always think it happens somewhere else to someone else. So to actually having it locally shocked everybody to the core.
Stephen Beatman is charged with Kaylee's rape and murder. Luke Harlow is charged with grooming and 2 counts of sexual activity with a minor. But what led this 15-year-old girl to meet such a brutal end? In the village of Ibstock, the hunt for missing teenager Kaye Haywood has ended in the worst-case scenario. Her body was recently discovered in an open field near Sents Valley Park.
I understand that Kaye was found with sort of cuts and bruises and lacerations that might indicate she'd been tied up, and that her death may not have been instant.
28-year-old landscape gardener Stephen Beatman has been charged with her rape and murder.
I honestly can't remember. I've been drinking. We'd all been drinking.
While 27-year-old Luke Harlow has been charged with grooming and sexual activity with an underage Kaye.
What do you feel, man?
This is too young. For what? For coming and stay in my mum for a start, I know.
While police prepare a case for trial, Kaylee's family have the agonising task of saying goodbye to their loved one.
We thought, this is her last send-off, this is what we can do for her. So we ended up having horse and carriage to carry Kaye to a final resting place. All white horses, purple, Cadbury's purple, Kaylee's favourite colour, was the main theme.
The actual procession between the church and the cemetery went past my front window. There wasn't a lamppost or a bollard without a purple ribbon attached to it. The front of the church where the service took place had been turned into almost a shrine. It was quite a spectacle. It was not something I've ever seen before in Measham.
The community was unbelievable, and the people that turned out for Kaye showed how much support we had. It meant so much.
Despite a beautiful send-off for Kaye, the upcoming court case continues to loom over her family. After confessing to where Kaylee's body is, Beatman pleads guilty to his charges of rape and murder. Due to the overwhelming evidence of their interaction on social media, Luke Harlow also pleads guilty to his 2 charges of grooming and sexual activity with an underage Kaye.
The defence thought that would be the end of it, and the prosecution would take those pleas and say, thank you very much.
But by re-looking at the circumstances of the case, the prosecution puts forward a further charge of false imprisonment against both defendants.
Both pleaded not guilty, and so we, with the consent of the family, and I spoke with the parents and the Crown Prosecution Service, we decided to take it to trial.
Six months after Kaylee's funeral, and the trial begins at Nottingham Crown Court.
The first day we went into court, they were there. Oh, it was horrible to see them just sitting there. There was times we wanted to say things, but we didn't. They was trying to, more or less, goad us to react. There was times where they would stare at us. There was times where there were smirks on their faces.
Prosecution case against Luke Harlow was that he falsely imprisoned Kaye inside his premises.
Luke Harlow always maintained that he was asleep and had no idea what had happened to Kaye. Problem with that was his glasses were broken. The flat looked as if there'd been a struggle, things had been knocked over. So his story about being asleep didn't ring true.
Stephen denied the false imprisonment because he said at all stages Kaye was free to leave. He did not, therefore, imprison her for the period of the time when they were outside once they both left the premises.
Beedman was going to suggest that he either couldn't remember what happened, or it was all a big accident, or she was keen. It didn't explain the banging and the crashing that witnesses had heard. It didn't explain her running off into the night half-dressed.
Horrific details of Kaylee's injuries emerge in the courtroom.
We didn't know the extent of what happened until we went to court. We now know that she was raped and she was murdered. And we also know that Kaye fought for her life.
She had multiple injuries, including a broken jaw, broken nose, to the front of her head. And she had multiple injuries to the back of her head. She also had classic defence-style injuries to her hands, which would indicate that she fought for her life and was subject to the most awful beating.
After days of breaking down all their evidence to the courtroom, the prosecution pieced together the full horror of what likely occurred at Luke Harlow's flat on 14th of November 2015. And who was really responsible for her murder?
We thought that once he got Kaye to his flat, he had Beedman over, sort of, look at me, look what I've got. And we thought that possibly Beedman wanted Kaye and she didn't want him. That's why there was the slamming and banging around when she wouldn't cooperate with this second man coming on the scene. And that's why they kept her there.
I understand that Kaye was trapped inside the house, restrained, and ultimately she managed to escape after her ordeal. She ran across the road out of the estate, crying for help.
She was barely wearing any clothes. She wasn't wearing her trousers, she wasn't wearing shoes, and we actually don't think she was wearing any underwear on her bottom half.
Beedman catches up with Kaye. He pins her to the ground, causing her to drop her phone on the pavement.
It was indeed him and Kaye who was seen by the witness to walk into Sense Valley Park. That he took her into the car park there, near to where the bra had been found, and on the gravel car park there, on the ground, he raped her.
Instead of walking her back to Luke Harlow's flat, or to his own flat, Beedman walked her across the busy road and into the woods opposite. It was about a mile across farmland.
According to Beedman, at one point, Kaye ran off and managed to get away from him, and he chased after her down the field, and when he caught her, he said that she smashed him in the face with a brick. And I took the brick off her, is what Beedman said, and I hit her in the back of the head with the brick, and this killed her.
The court hears how Kaye bravely fought to the end. But as the trial comes to a close, there's one more shocking revelation about Luke Harlow.
He was actually charged with 2 further instances of grooming with 2 girls who lived nowhere near where he was from, and just people he'd made contact with in the same way that he made contact with Kaye.
After a grueling 2-week trial, the jury returns its verdict. Both men are found guilty of falsely imprisoning Kaye Haywood. Beedman receives 35 years for rape, murder, and false imprisonment. Harlow receives 12 years for sexual grooming, sexual activity with a child, and false imprisonment.
I don't hate a lot of people, but I hate them. Hate is a strong word for me. But I hate them two people for what they put me and my family through. They've took away a big sister, a little sister, a daughter, a granddaughter.
After the trial, it came to light that tragically it was not the first time Kaylee had been flattered on social media. She was also being groomed by another man around the same time she agreed to meet with Luke Harlow. With such dangers facing young people online, Kaylee's family want her lasting legacy to ensure another innocent young life is not taken in such a tragic way.
So he started to think in terms of a film, and that film was made. It was called Kaylee's Love Story.
Kaylee's Love Story that has been shown to thousands and thousands of school children across the country. I simply want to get that awareness out there because children are not aware of the dangers of online. And if I can just save one, then Kaylee's memory stays alive.
I have 3 girls myself, and it's a parent's worst nightmare. I couldn't imagine being in that situation.
5 years on, and Kaylee's family are having to learn to live with the tragedy.
People tell me time is a healer. Time isn't a healer. I don't believe in it. Every day's hard. Every day's a struggle. You just learn to live on a day-to-day basis.
And Kaylee's father, Martin, will always remember his purple princess.
I still relive that fateful weekend time and time again. It never leaves me, never. Our last goodbyes as Kaylee left that day, happy, waving and smiling as she went. Little did I know what was to come. I feel such sadness, pain, aching and longing in my heart to see her once more, but knowing it can never be. The hurt physically tugs deep inside of me, it hurts so much. One day we will meet again. Until then, all I can do is keep missing and loving her with all my heart.